U.S. territories. There's also measures, provisions to support multi-employer pensions. There is $75 billion to ramp up coronavirus testing and contact tracing. You throw that in to say that you did it because you don't want Mitch McConnell to say they didn't even want to do tracing or testing.
Right.
$75 billion for mortgage relief, $100 billion for renters, $25 billion for the U.S. Postal Service, $3.6 billion to shore up elections. I don't know what that means in terms of money, but I don't know what if they're instituting vote by mail. You want to push that. There's another round of $1,200 checks for adults, up to $75,000 if you're making. Under this bill, kids would receive the same amount instead of $500. But again, there is no automatic economic stabilizers.
Right.
Which
they're not even just dumping. They could just, I think they are kicking up food stamps a little bit, but they could just even be shoveling an unlimited amount of money into the food stamp program.
I just want to reiterate what an economic automatic stabilizer is. You want to make sure that if Joe Biden wins, Mitch McConnell and the Republicans hold the Senate, that Mitch McConnell doesn't block attempts by Democrats to help the economy like they did in 2009. And the way you do that is you pass bills now that instead of saying this sunsets at a certain date, you say that it sunsets at certain economic benchmarks. This will end when we have 5% unemployment. This will end when we have 3% unemployment or 7% unemployment. But until that point, it continues on. They're not doing that.
And food stamps are a great example of that as a program.
They are, they're going to allow cannabis businesses to expand access to bank accounts and loans. Good. Restoring the ability to deduct state and local taxes completely underpaid. That's just a big giveaway. That's just a big tax cut to wealthy people. That's all it is. And if you're going to give a tax cut, give it to people who are actually going to spend more of it.
Right.
Not to the wealthiest people that are there. On top of all this,
This is a protect our, because just in the way that the Republican bill in 2017 was a big wealth giveaway, but it also did specifically target, like, hey, if you're upper middle class in a state that votes Democrats, we're gonna hit you. And this is a clawback bill for that, and instead of a emergency stimulus during the pandemic.
Right. And there's some argument that money is some of it's gonna go into the economy, but not much. Because the bottom line is we don't have an economy.
Yeah, what more? I mean, how much more can people order online? I mean, I think folks who have that are already doing that.
I'm going to go and order I'm going to order a small house.
Right. I'll buy an office building on Amazon.
This Cobra subsidies. It's in the HEROES Act, they're calling it. Runs through January 31st, 2021. So as soon as Joe Biden is inaugurated, if everything goes well, then Mitch McConnell says, we're done subsidizing health insurance. Good luck to you. And then we're effed. Or Mitch McConnell loses the Senate, and Chris Coons is there. We must protect the filibuster at all costs. And so the Republicans filibuster any possible fix for health insurance for the millions upon millions of people who let's just assume the virus goes away by August. It goes away like magic.
Yeah, it's just magic.
Against everything that we understand about science and viruses and any of this. We're still going to have tens of millions of people without health insurance on January 21st, 2021. And the idea that you would leave that up to the Republicans without and understand what you're doing is also giving them tremendous leverage for you to do nothing. If you have some type of safety net that is there, that gives you room. They say go find another job when you have one. That's the dynamic. But no, they're not doing that because they are so terrified of creating any type of reform mechanism that is moving forward. I mean, this is the clearest example of Pelosi not just trying to lay low, but to make sure the understanding that they are also fighting a two-front war in their minds.
Oh,
they are fighting a growing progressive caucus and insurgency, and they need to fight that. Look, picking up in Nebraska second, Carrie Eastman won the primary last night. She lost her race by 2 points in 2018. When Donald Trump is on the ballot and Democrats come out, if they throw a little money there, she's going to win. And there's a vote for Medicare for all that you didn't have before. There's another person in the progressive caucus that wasn't there before. You start picking them up in Nebraska. Maybe you pick one up in California and in New York. And pretty soon, remember, we're talking about a Democratic Congress, 238 some odd people. 10 people makes a difference. Makes a difference when you're talking 40%. So they're worried, I think, in some level, and it's a real. And
it's their politics. I mean, there's no, they're worried and they're center right. I mean, there's no other way of describing their politics. And I think, it's important to understand. I'm also trying to follow specifically what's happening with Cuomo, because I read last night that potentially the bill is written in such a way that he could get some state aid and still cut Medicaid. But I'm seeing today that he might actually reject some of this aid so he can move forward cutting Medicaid. So I don't know, but that's another inspiring thread to follow here of a guy who's riding high, who apparently, I mean, look, New York is a complete disaster because of his leadership. And now he's, sees this as an opportunity to gut the public school system and cut Medicaid. But at any rate.
One other point, Sam, there isn't any sort of protection in there against raising the cost of ACA plans for 2020, right?
Not that I know of. I mean, that's the thing, is we get nothing for those huge subsidies that we're giving the insurance companies.
Right.
Nothing. Right. I mean, there's no one who's done like a deep dive on the text of the bill. It's 1,200 pages, and they're going to vote on it in 2 days. All right, let's just go through this quick story. Donald Trump, listen to this. It's just sort of stunning to me. As you know, every medical expert that you've heard from on TV or anywhere has said we are probably undercounting the COVID-19 deaths. Certain percentage of people who die at home. The way that you measure this is you compare last year, the year-over-year deaths figures. So if there's 8,000 people more who've died in your city over a course of 2 months in 2020 versus 2019 and 2018 and 2017 and 2016, you look around, is there some possible explanation for that? Particularly when people are at home. They're not getting hit by cars as much. They're not getting car crashes. They're not getting whatever it is. They're not even catching the flu that often. Well, in this sense, it's probably the pandemic that's going on, that's killing thousands of other people. So that's the reality of what's going on. Meanwhile, the president in recent weeks, this is the Daily Beast reporting, has privately raised suspicion about the number of fatalities in the United States, which recently eclipsed 80,000 recorded deaths. There's something eerily reminiscent of him saying that all those undocumented immigrants went from Massachusetts to New Hampshire to vote and juice Hillary Clinton's vote tallies. In talks with top officials, Trump has suggested that those numbers could have been incorrectly tallied or even inflated by current methodology. Like, what kind of language do you think Trump is saying? Like, I'm a little bit concerned that these could be inflated by the methodology you're using. Or he could be saying, like, I don't like it. Make it less.
Right.
The White House has pressed the CDC, this is according to two individuals with knowledge of the private comments. The The White House has pressed the CDC in particular to work with states to change how they count coronavirus deaths and report them back to the federal government. It's according to two officials with knowledge of those conversations. And Deborah Birx, the coordinator of the administration's coronavirus task force, has urged CDC officials to exclude from coronavirus death count reporting some of those individuals who either do not have confirmed lab results and are presumed positive, or have the virus and may not have died as a direct result of it, is according to three senior administration officials. So this is not like, oh, they were coming to the hospital because they had coronavirus, but they were hit by a car and they died. This is, they come into the hospital and they get complications as a function of having coronavirus.
Right.
And officials inside the CDC, 5 of whom spoke to the Daily Beast, said they're pushing back against the request, claiming it could falsely skew the mortality rate at a time when state and local governments are already struggling to ensure that every person who dies as a result of the coronavirus is counted. Scientists and doctors working with the task force, including Fauci, have said the U.S. death toll count is likely higher than being reflected in government data sets, and several local officials in hotspots say they've seen hundreds, if not thousands, more deaths over the last 2 months than the same period over the last several years. I don't worry about this over-reporting issue, said Bob Anderson, the chief of mortality statistics branch in the CDC's National Center for Health Statistics. What does that guy know?
No, he's an idiot. He's part of the deep state. I mean, Bernie Sanders said, asked Dr. Fauci that it could be, he's heard some people say that it could be 50% higher than what's reported. And Fauci basically said, we don't know, but I think it's very safe to assume that it's higher. And the point I want to make about, Bernie asking that is, it might not be that high. But Bernie's not a Republican senator. He didn't read a blog post at Newsmax and just get a number and say it. He's getting that from somewhere. Somebody credible told him that.
Yep. All right, folks. We're going to take a quick break, head into the fun half, number 646-257-3920. You want to be a part of the program. We've got a lot of sound to go through. Obamagate is really heating up.
It's Bushgate. That was the big thing. It was Bushgate.
Just a reminder, this program relies on your support. You can become a member by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. Got a lot of members who need some assistance. So if you are one of those people who are not needing financial assistance to join the program, now would be a great time to support it. Jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, don't forget the AM Quickie. We're going to start sending a notice out on the app. The AM Quickie is up. So check that out. And also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, and chocolate. Use the coupon code Majority. Get 10% off. You can get as wired as I am every day through that coffee. Michael, TMBS last night.
TMBS last night, we talked with Maximilian Alvarez, who's sort of reporting on the ground with what's happening with labor actions across the country. Talked about why and how the economic consensus is consolidating, even though we're in crisis. And Adolph Reed Jr., we had a great conversation that tracked basically his career. Academically and as an organizer in the post game. We talked about did a deep dive in the new Michael Moore movie and a whole bunch more. Patreon.
What's the deal with that movie?
The deal with that movie is,
I mean, I've been reading a little bit about the scuttlebutt, but I haven't read too deep into it, to be honest with you.
I think the deal with that movie is that there's some very valid criticisms that are being leveled at some of the mainline environmental organizations for, certainly ones like, the big name ones that are funded by people like Bloomberg and Steyer and have definitely laundered the reputations of, Shell as an example. And I think that at its best it's a provocative sort of push against some cliches. On the other hand, it seems to be very clearly out of date when it talks about the viability of renewables. In other words, making a critique that might have been valid 10 years ago, but has not kept pace with advances in some of these things like solar. And then according to Joshua Kahn, it raises a